Hello, this is Craig from bitsbox.co.uk. In this video I'm going to talk about Warhammer 40,000 and Age of Sigmar, and in particular what Warhammer 40,000 can take out of Age of Sigmar. So what I mean by that is there's certain things in Age of Sigmar that I would like to see in 40k. So if you don't already know, I'm a massive 40k player. Obviously if you're watching this you've probably seen some of the bat reps on this channel. I never really got into fantasy so much. I did have a Vampire Count's Army sort of probably about 10 years ago, and I did recently have Tomb King's Army in the last edition, but I never really played fantasy that much. With Age of Sigmar, because there's a very simple rule set, only 4 pages of rules, it's something that I can pick up and play really easily, and I've had several games recently, and the last bat rep I did with Wayne for the channel has proved quite popular, so we're hoping to get some more Age of Sigmar done within the next couple of months, definitely. Now, that's not to say that I think 40k should go in that direction. I certainly don't think they should have 4 pages of rules, and I actually believe Age of Sigmar should have more rules. Hopefully there'll be an expanded rule set or something in the future. I'd certainly like to see that, especially maybe more with terrain and movement and stuff I'd like to see, because obviously it's quite easy just to move through terrain, whereas in 40k you have difficult terrain and charge distances made shorter, and etc., and different levels of cover. I'd like to see stuff like that, certainly in Age of Sigmar. But this video is mainly about the opposite, what I'd like to see in 40k from Age of Sigmar. And there are a few things, and I will go over them very soon, and maybe at the end of the video I'll talk about what I'd like to see Age of Sigmar have from 40k. And certainly different levels of cover and more terrain stuff is certainly one of them. But I want to talk about what 40k can take out of Age of Sigmar first. So, now there's probably a lot of people thinking that the last thing they'd want is 40k to go in that route, but bear with me. As I said at the beginning, I don't want it to go into 4 pages of rules and be really simplified, because that's not what 40k is about. It's far more complex than that, although I think it should be slightly easier to pick up, and I'd like to see it somewhere between where it is now and where Age of Sigmar is. And the first thing I would like to see, and I'm sure everyone would agree with this, is free rules. Age of Sigmar has all the war scrolls for every unit free on their app. If you can imagine something like that for 40k, it'd be amazing. It would be fantastic. Maybe we'll see that in the next edition. Who knows? Obviously GW probably must make a lot of money out of Codex sales, and maybe they've been using Age of Sigmar to test the water to see what sort of impact it would have to have free rules. But I think, you know, the app's fantastic. Having all the rules just there. Now, of course, different formations or battalions, whatever, you have to unlock by buying the books, and I think that's a good way of doing it. Just give everyone the basics for free, so every unit, all their rules for free, and then like in 40k you can't, you know, you'd have to buy formations and extra missions and stuff like that. I think that's the right way to do it, and you know, I'd love to see that in 40k. So in terms of the rules, I do like some things in Age of Sigmar. I like that the weapons of each unit have their own sort of profile, so there's no strength or toughness, etc., or weapon skill. You'll hit regarding sort of to do with the weapon stats and stuff like that. I do quite like that in 40k. I think if you were to have something like that, you'd need certain tweaking. For ranged weapons, it wouldn't be so bad, because I think a ballistic skill value, when you then have to look on a table to see what that ballistic skill equals to, you know, rather than having something where it just says you hit on a 3+, because ballistic skill is just a set number that you hit on. Obviously when it gets over 6 there's all rerolls and stuff like that, but you could just put a special rule for very good stuff that they get to reroll, etc., when they hit with a certain weapon. But yeah, I'd like to see that. So if you just said bolt guns hit on a 3+, you know, that changes nothing. Not, you know, not really. I know other Imperial Guardsmen might take them and they'll hit on a 4 or something, but you know, you can give them specifics. Specific weapons, like different type of bolt gun, or something like that. You know, I quite like that. That simplifies thing. And I think the melee as well, hitting a lot of the times you hit on 4s, 4+. Obviously, some things are better in hand-to-hand than others, and they hit on 3s. But yeah, you could have something like that as well. I think it wouldn't make a massive difference. I don't like the old hit and wound tables so much, really. If you wanted stuff with well, if you want to go in the way with wounds, now that's where it gets a bit more complicated, because obviously there's so many different toughness values in that, and it is, you know, it is a bit strange in Age of Sigmar that, you know, this sword will wound a dragon on a 4+ as well as a little grot also on a 4+ or something like that. That is a bit strange, but at the same time you sort of counteract that by giving better saves to bigger stuff and more wounds and that. So, you know, in a way, I think you could balance it out that way. So if you want something to be uber tough, you could just give them a better save, or you could give them more wounds, or you could even have a special rule where everyone's at -1 to wound with their weapons or something like that. So I think that would work. You know, I'm talking about drastically changing the stat lines of 40k stuff here, and I know some people will probably hate that and be against it, but I think you can change it to a degree where it won't really change much in the game. That's what I'm trying to sort of explain. So if you went sort of a little way down that Age of Sigmar route and simplified stats, I think you'd still have to have other stats. I still quite like having initiative and that. Although I am a big fan of how close combat works in Age of Sigmar, so I certainly wouldn't be against that in 40k, but 40k is more of a shooting game rather than a close combat game. Certainly in this current edition, shooting is a lot more effective than close combat, really, on the whole. A lot of games are usually won and lost in the shooting phases rather than the combat phase. But yeah, I think certainly in regards to like ballistic skill and that, just to, you know, even if you just give stuff a hit value, it just makes it slightly a bit easier for newer players rather than have to keep looking up what ballistic skill 3 means or ballistic skill 4 means. You know, it's just an extra thing to remember. It's a bit unnecessary, really, and I think certainly when it comes to hitting and shooting phases or close combat, you know, that could be simplified, and I'd like to see that. So next, I've got a little list of stuff over here, and one of the things is that the ability to run in the movement phase. It always seems strange. I understand why in 40k you can choose to run or shoot, because, you might move something somewhere, and then they'll be in range of a unit, but then another unit might kill that unit, and then you think, well, there's another unit in range, so therefore I can run, and then you just get an extra few inches from running. That's fine. I sort of understand the tactical implications of that. But at the same time, if you just had it in the movement phase, it just speeds the game up so much. You find that so much in Age of Sigmar. You know, you just roll a dice and add it onto your movement phase. Again, because it's more of a close combat game, a lot of stuff just runs anyway. If they know they can't make a charge, they'll just run. But it is a nice little thing to speed up the game. But I understand at the same time why it's in the shooting phase for 40k. So another big thing is completely changing how the vehicle rules work. Now, I don't expect many people to agree with me on this, but I'm not a massive fan of the vehicle damage table, anything like that in 40k. So if you've watched some of our bat reps, I can't remember which one, but there's one of them where I think it's in the Path to Glory campaign. Nice Vindicator tank, you know, fantastic weapon on it, and in turn 1 it gets weapon destroyed and it's just a box and useless. And you know, that's really frustrating. Obviously it doesn't always happen, but for short range tanks like that, or, you know, it's probably happened to a lot of people where they've got a rhino, it just gets immobilised straight away and then it's useless. What I do like in Age of Sigmar, with the big monsters and stuff like that, is the more wounds you cause on them, the weaker they get. And, you know, I'd like to see something like that with vehicles in 40k. So instead of immobilising that rhino on turn 1, it could then just get slower. You know, it could need more to hit with its Stormbolt, etc. That would be quite nice. And you could even have weapons destroyed down the line. Now, of course, you'd have more than 3 hull points. I'm sort of like if you think of them similar to the beasts in Age of Sigmar, so they have loads of hull points, but they're really easy to take off. Now, I know that might seem weird that someone could just gun a rhino to death with bolt guns. So maybe you could change a rule where like weaker weapons aren't effective against vehicles, something like that. And then you can get stuff like las cannons, etc. that can do like loads of damage to them. So there are ways around that, but you'd have to tweak it. But I quite like that sort of idea. Of course, then it'd be very hard to just one-shot kill a rhino with a las cannon or something, and I think really you do need that. So I'm not coming up with answers here, but I'm sure there's things you could do just to make it a bit more interesting. But I'd like to see that sort of system where vehicles get weaker or slower or less effective as they lose hull points, rather than them just all of a sudden just being immobilized or weapon destroyed and they can't do anything. Or that's what I'd like to see, rather than just having to roll on the table all the time. So next up, I have the hero and battle shock phases. Now I'm quite a fan of these phases in the game. I think you could get rid of the psychic phase and have a hero phase instead. Command traits just seem better than warlord traits in 40k. A lot of the times with warlord traits, I just forget I've got them. Whereas like a command ability or command trait or something, something that you might have to use once a game or something like that, or something you use every hero phase, could have an effect on another unit. I quite like them, and I'd like to see sort of similar things to the command abilities and command traits, etc. In 40k. And then you could use the hero phase for all your psychic powers as well. I do quite like how magic works in the Age of Sigmar. It's quite simple, but at the same time, using warp charge points and stuff in 40k is still quite good, and I'd like to see that stay in. Battle shock phase, you could have a leadership phase, and I do like how battle shock works as well. It sort of represents models running away from the battle when they know they're probably not going to survive, and you could have that in 40k, possibly. I don't know how it would work with Nation No Fear, but even if you had a leadership, battle shock phase, etc., you could keep leadership how it is and have it work the same way as it is. Of course, having to roll for leadership at the end of every phase can give you some little advantages as well, but I think overall it wouldn't make much of a difference if you only had it at the end of every player turn either. So you could have something like that. Makes it easier to remember as well. 'Cause, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of the time, I might use a couple of models in my enemy shooting phase, and then forget that I had to do a leadership test, and then have to go back to do that. And it just makes it a bit easier having a phase for leadership. So another thing I have, and this is only quite a recent thing, but that's points for formations. Now, a lot of people say 40k is broken these days. There's hundreds of formations out there now, different force orgs as well, like the Decurion, etc. And there's no points tax for taking any of these. Whereas in Age of Sigmar, you have your battalions, and they cost points to take. Only very recently, of course, with the General's Handbook only just being released. But that stops certain things from just being too overpowered, because at least then you have to pay points to take the abilities that you get from them. And I think 40k should have points for their formations. And they used to, of course, back when you had Apocalypse formations. So, that's something I'd like to see in 40k. So, some of these changes are more drastic than others. I think, excuse me, probably quite a lot of people agree that you probably should have points for formations in 40k, just so you're paying a bit for a bonus. On the previous points I mentioned, I'm not too sure if a lot of people will agree with me, but I'm just trying to think of somewhere between Age of Sigmar and 40k where I think 40k needs to be, because I think it's, I wouldn't say it's like a really complicated game, but I think there's a lot you could take out of it without changing the game so much, which will then obviously make it easier for newer players and still feel the same as it does for us veteran players. So yeah, there's rumours there might be a new edition on the horizon, maybe next summer. So we'll see what GW come up with. For anyone who fears that it'll go completely Age of Sigmar way and end up just having 4 pages of rules and really simplified stats and stuff, I don't think that will happen. That'd be very unlikely. But I do think it will be simplified, and it should be to a certain degree. So, as I stated at the beginning of the video, there are a few things that I think Age of Sigmar could take out of 40k. So, yeah, different levels of cover would be quite nice. Maybe when we see more terrain and stuff being released in the future, that could be a possibility. But I think you could do a lot with the terrain rules in Age of Sigmar, just to make it a bit more complex. I mean, what I'd like them to see them do eventually is, obviously we've got a core set of rules of 4 pages, but if you had something similar to the General's Handbook where it had more expanded rules, I know the General's Handbook do have a few extra little bits in there, but you could have sort of more expanded, sort of complex rules, just for more veteran players, to add a bit more sort of interest to the game, I suppose, and a bit more dynamic. Certainly doing more with terrain be the first thing I would do. Another thing I would like to see is the removal of roll into initiative for every turn. So yeah, I don't expect people to agree too much on that. I do like it, don't get me wrong. Having to roll for initiative each turn, it makes the game interesting. You sort of have to sort of plan that your opponent might get 2 goes before you get to go again. And in a game where you ultimately just end up in close combat towards the end of the game, I suppose it's not massive in terms of the game. But I don't know, maybe I'm just old fashioned. I just like rolling off see goes first and then just taking opposite turns. But, you know, it is something what makes Age of Sigmar different to 40k, I suppose. And, you know, maybe GW do want to keep these little differences in, just so the games have that different feel to them. But yeah, I'm not a fan of that at the moment. So maybe it's not something I haven't embraced too much. Another thing that I really, I wouldn't say I don't like, maybe, but just don't make too much sense in Age of Sigmar is shooting in and out of combat. Now, I sort of can understand shooting into a combat. You see it in other games, but normally there's like a penalty, so there's a chance of hitting your own people. If you played Malifaux, for example, you can shoot into a combat between 2 people in Malifaux, and then there's a risk you could hurt your own person. I think there should be something like that. If you're going to shoot into combat in Age of Sigmar, you should, if you want to make it more realistic, you should make it so there's a chance you could hurt your own guys. Shooting out of combat, or shooting while you're in close combat, is a bit strange. We were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, I think, and if you had guys in close combat who weren't in base to base with enemy models and they were like firing in or out for combat, you can sort of see how that would make sense. You know, you got a few guys on the front line fighting in melee, while the guys at the back are shooting bows and arrows all around them just to weaken the enemies around them. You can sort of get that, but when everyone they're in close combat, they've got their swords out, you know, having a melee battle, and all of a sudden they put their sword away, get a bow and arrow out, shoot the guy in front of them, and then get their sword back out again. It's like, it just doesn't seem realistic. You know, the time it takes to get your bow and arrow out, you'd have your head chopped off. So, yeah, it's weird. It's certainly a strange thing, and I think when Age of Sigmar first came out, people weren't too sure if that was intentional, that you could actually shoot in and out of close combat, but I believe GW did come out and say that's fine, and yeah, it's weird. I wouldn't have it in Age of Sigmar personally. As I said, if people aren't in base to base, you know, their unit might be in combat, but them themselves might not be in base to base, then having them firing out of combat could make sense. But yeah, it's I don't know, it doesn't have that realistic feel. I know the game's fantasy and, you know, it's not real, but at the same time it just don't make sense really. So yeah, it's certainly not something I'd like to see in 40k, which is why I haven't mentioned it until now. So yeah, just having that restriction like you do in 40k in Age of Sigmar, I think, yeah, that'd be nice. It's handy, don't get me wrong, it's handy being able to shoot while you're in close combat, and it does make some units quite good, but it doesn't make sense, and, you know, I wouldn't worry too much if it was removed. So I think I've rambled on long enough in this video. I'm sure there's plenty that people disagree with, and hopefully a few of my points people will agree with, and I'm sure there's many points and opinions that people have, and I would love to hear them. So if there's things that you'd like to see in 40k or Age of Sigmar from one game system or the other, or even something that you've seen in another game system what you'd like to see in Age of Sigmar or 40k, that'd be great to hear your guys' opinions. So yeah, please leave a comment below if you have anything to share, or if there's anything I've said that you really disagree with, please let me know. I'm sure you'll be able to talk me around, maybe. So as always, thank you very much for watching this video and listening to me ramble on. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already, and I will see you all in the next video.